He called it Boros Vintage Cube because almost every card in his deck is in the Vintage Cube or, Vintage Cube adjacent. It's kind of just like a mid-range aggro deck, Fear of Missing Out, Screaming Nemesis, very, very high card quality, Voice of Victory, a couple removal spells, Sheltered by Ghosts. He also describes me as having a Splinter Twin in his sideboard.
Okay.
Magebane Lizard plus Sheltered by Ghosts against Izzet. For the Wombo combo, it deals the damage, you gain the life. It's protected from the Sheltered by Ghosts. So,
okay.
Harlan is, some folks come to you and say they have a brew, and you're like, all right, sure, whatever. Harlan is not one of those people. Harlan brews all the time, well known for it. Very excited to see his deck in action.
Yeah, someone will say like, "Oh, I got this sick brew, and it's stock Izzet Prowess with 2 changes in the sideboard or something," and then you just walk away from them, and you just can no longer keep talking to them. But yeah, Harlan Fear's got a spicy one here. I think this is basically Boros cards I own in my trade binder as well, so should be really interesting. Up against Bailey on Azorius Omniscience. Wasn't Harlan saying this was the one matchup he wanted to avoid, though?
He did say that. He said he was extremely poor to Omniscience and then great against everything else. So this is the trouble of, matchups in a metagame and in a tournament where you can plan for most things, but sometimes you gotta try and break through in a bad spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you physically got him on camera in his worst matchup, right? That's just what friends do?
That was my instructions, yes. The director was only put Harlan on if it's against Omniscience.
If it's a bad matchup, yeah, exactly. We gotta have him fighting upstream here. So, Voice of Victory coming in for some beatdowns, attacking for 3, heading back to Bailey. Let's see if there is an answer. Now, no land drop from Harlan here, which is going to be pretty brutal. Let's see if there's a temporary lockdown. Bang, there they go.
All right, so there are 2 main deck Lorans here on Harlan's side. Let me break this up, hopefully, and a Get Lost too. Unfortunately, the interaction in there you go. Interaction in Harlan's deck is not lining up great here. Burst Lightning, Lightning Helix, Abrade, Sheltered by Ghosts. All of these cards are not really for this matchup.
Yeah.
So kind of on the beatdown plan in game 1 with a little bit of interaction, and then game 2 we'll see some more stuff.
Yeah, definitely seems like, we always look at these standard decks when there's a deck that's 35+% of the metagame in the lens that how do they do against the big deck, the deck that every single one of these competitors figured would be the most played deck as it is it Prowess? And it looks pretty solid against that. Screaming Nemesis, Abrades in the main deck to deal with Corey Steelcutter. This definitely seems like this is not only a Harlan brew, but a deck very much ready to and does pretty confidently beat the Izzet deck.
And that is what the brewers do, where they don't just brew, they brew with purpose.
Yes.
It's not just like, I'm going to build this cool deck. It's like finding the cool deck that lines up well with the current metagame.
Yep, absolutely. So here could be a Burst Lightning on the temporary lockdown, something we don't say very often. And Harlan had the ability to kind of destroy it with the ability on the stack. But, hey, clean up those maps. It's minor, but, hey, it's still a thing. Now we get a big old attack for 9 in. And there's no Omniscience in the board, so it's not like we're comboing right now unless we can surveil an Omniscience into the board. So things looking quite good for Harlan.
Yeah, it's funny how we just spent 2 minutes talking about how the interaction doesn't line up right.
Yes.
And Burst Lightning kills a lockdown. Didn't know it could do that,
Yeah, no kidding. Gotta love the spice. There's stock up and a couple of lands. So if there's nothing to stop the attack, and to be fair, these Azorius Omniscience deck, sure they have lockdown, sure they have some dispersals, but outside of that, they play a lot of air to get to the combo. And by air, I mean card draw, moment of truth, that kind of stuff. And looks like Harlan's able to take down, I feel like the game he has to win with a deck like this.
So huge
in
these bad matches to win game 1. And we see a bit of the allure here of we watched Domain versus Omniscience earlier. Tough matchup,
Yeah.
But Harlan's deck, everyone has a plan to get punched in the mouth,
Yes.
It comes out swinging. It has enough creatures where you can get in for a reasonably aggressive attacks pretty early, put on a clock. We saw one piece of interaction with the Get Lost, I guess the Burst Lightning as well. Takes it down.
I see Invasion of Gobakon there from Harlan's side. Are you bringing in that kind of card against Omniscience, or what is Harlan doing?
Yeah, Invasion seems phenomenal. That's like the White Thoughtseize effect, which is excellent. And then 4 Magebane Lizard, pretty exciting card in sideboards for this tournament because it's obviously great against Izzet. It plays many, many spells. It's great here, too. The Omniscience deck, Yeah, the Omni deck cannot combo off with a Mage Bane in play because it involves just casting a bajillion spells. So Mage Bane's great. We got a Ghost Vacuum action too. Even Destroy Evil. Another spot where like most of a sideboard can just come in here, and obviously Lightning Helixes and Abrades can get out of the deck, and we can see a much more interactive game in Game 2.
Sounds right. How about from Bailey's side? What do we do up against? And I mean, to be fair, Bailey is not going to be prepared for this Boros deck. You can be prepared for mid-range style matchups, that kind of thing, but Bailey has not tested against this deck.
I would be surprised if so, yes. But Beza and Overlord here, kind of like the transformational plan, looks quite nice. Of course, the Clarion Conqueror could also turn off Ghost Vacuum. So this creature package looks pretty nice, and this is a real Zig versus Zag scenario where Harlan looks like there's a lot of cards coming in, a lot of his kill spells are going out. That makes the creatures on Bailey's side good, but Harlan sees this too and knows that, so if Harlan does the this and that, it's just well, screw it, the way you want it in front of you, in front of me, whatever kind of thing. So
I like it.
So it's definitely some fun jockeying here. Would not be surprised to see Bailey go back to the sideboard for Game 3, shuffle things around a little bit. But Beza and Overlord probably the most important cards.
All right. Well, Bailey is going through the sideboard. Let's take a look at our newsletter. If you want to stay on top of everything when it comes to Star City Games, make sure to go to starcitygames.com/newsletter. You will get notified anytime there is pre-order starting, sales on singles, when the next event is. Basically anything having to do with these SCG cons, the newsletter is going to contain it. And as you were saying earlier, they don't overdo it. They send you the information you need, and they don't keep flooding you with it. So make sure to sign up for this newsletter. I've been signed up for a very long time, and it's nice to know exactly what's going on at these Star City Games events. All right, getting back into it. Both players at 3-1. You feel great going in at 4-1. Of course, ideally, everyone would like to be 5-0, but after 5 rounds, you sit at 4-1. You're going to be feeling very good about your tournament. 3-2. When you have 4 more rounds left to go, where you feel like you got to win them all to really have a good chance tomorrow, or you can lose once, it doesn't feel the best when you're going into those last 4 rounds, Jim. For sure. Yeah, the middle part of the tournament's definitely, the teetering point. We're about at that point, where whoever loses this match is still super alive. But there's an amount of momentum as the day goes on. We're not machines. We are human beings, and we are definitely subject to the whims of round 1 jitters. The mid round kind of push, and then late round kind of getting over the fatigue. Yeah.
So the more you can make those late rounds easier for yourself, the better it is.
Yeah, 100%. You start off a tournament, you're feeling good, you're playing great, but then, like you said, we are indeed humans. So by the end, it's very hard to play a perfect tournament, or it's impossible. It's pretty hard to play a perfect match.
Yep.
It's hard to play a perfect game, so you want to make sure and get yourself a lot of wins early so you can afford to stumble, when you kind of have to, or maybe draw poorly in a match. Give yourself that leeway so you're still live for top 8, even with a little bit of bad luck on your side. So
it's fun watching the different kind of players, too.
Yeah.
Where some players thrive with their backs against the wall.
Yes.
And some players are the opposite. They're very momentum-focused. They start off 5-0 and 6-0. They're a freight train. They take an early loss, though, and they derail.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun watching each different kind of player go through tournaments.
What kind of player are you?
It's funny. I'm a kind of streaky player.
Yeah.
Where my losses and wins tend to come in bunches.
Yeah.
Which I noticed a lot playing the PT the last few years. I don't really know why exactly. But often win 4 or 5, lose 3 or 4, up and down.
Yeah. I mean, I do see you half the time, in the tournament halls after you lose 2 matches, you're just throwing your deck box at the wall. Is that part of your process, or is that just you being on tilt?
I'm just testing its durability.
Ah, okay.
I didn't throw it. I was just testing its durability.
You were placing it.
Right.
Okay, my bad. All right, Roiling Dragonstorm to get us started, and fear of missing out from Harlan to be able to get some aggression going. Discards the Cavern, so it does not have Omniscience in the yard to kind of put Harlan in check. So we'll see if Bailey can have a little bit stronger of a draw this game. And, if Harlan is going to put as much pressure down as we saw the first game. Sure, it was only 2-drop, 2-drop into 3-drop, nothing super exciting, but they hit hard. And, and you think, God, if you can fear of missing out, like a Voice of Victory or something too, you can do some nasty stuff with this card as well.
Yeah, Voice of Victory is a card I'm really impressed with.
Yeah.
It looks so innocent as a 1/3 until you realize it's actually just a 3/3.
Yeah.
And then the ability to make your opponent like play very, very awkwardly, not on your turn, even if it's not counter spells. It's just card draw spells or interaction. It's also especially good against a Forest Dispersal and Ride's End, cards that must be cast in your opponent's turn for the most part.
Yeah.
So,
no, definitely a phenomenal spot to be at. You know, you play against Jeskai Control or something from Harlan's Boros deck, like, man, shutting off every single counterspell, not only is it going to affect the in-game, just how the game is going to play out, but it's going to affect how your opponent sideboards. They might be taking out all their counterspells, where counterspells are normally good against a Boros mid-range deck. You know, like being able to counter No More Lies, your opponent's 4-drop or whatever, is usually a great exchange, but do you leave those in if they have Voice of Victory? Who knows? Here's Biza.
Biza is so good.
So good. I feel like we're going to be saying this all weekend.
Yeah.
Biza is just incredible.
Like, it's almost overshadowed a bit because of how Monstrous Rage can kind of push through it.
Yeah.
And most of the aggro decks are so predicated on Monstrous Rage. But Biza is just an unbelievable defensive force.
Yeah, absolutely impressive. And we're going to be seeing it for a long time, you know, in one of our most recent sets here in Bloomburrow. So when we see rotation, the powerful Elemental Elk or Monstrous Rage for that, we'll still be seeing them. And here is Screaming Nemesis. I love the shortcut. You know, Harlan's been playing for a while. Like, why play it untapped and then tap it? You know it's attacking.
Strong agree.
Yeah. Comes in with the Nemesis, and man, that is a tough creature to block.
Yeah, that being said, though, it was at a pretty safe 19.
Yeah.
And then with this, you know, kind of wall of fish and elemental elks, has a lot of time to get set up here. And, you know, Harlan has Summit Direction, but not a ton. There aren't counter spells here. You know, there isn't really a lot of graveyard hate aside from the Ghost Vacuums. So right now, advantage Bailey for sure. Yeah,
and it's all permanent-based interaction from Harlan, right? We don't really have too many spells that interact. Sure, you could see the Burst Lightning on, you know, a lockdown or something that got brought back from Umbrello's Awakening, but I think that was something that was a little unique that we saw from the last game. Here's Screaming Nemesis number 2, and double Screaming Nemesis plus double Fear of Missing Out getting in there.
Yeah, so Bailey attacking with Basilisk turn is a pretty strong signifier that there's going to be a lot of interaction on this attack step.
Yeah.
You know, while you don't want to block the Nemesis with the Beza, Bomo's a great block. You know, so
yeah, that's strange to attack with it, wouldn't you think?
I think it's just Bailey saying that, like, hey, I'm going to threaten a fair game too.
Yeah.
We've seen these Omniscience decks win a lot of games of combat damage in the post-board games, and just making sure that it's not one-dimensional where you say, I'm attacking you for a bit also. Didn't know second Nemesis was coming either.
Yeah.
But, you know, kind of making sure that I'm going to pressure you here and then also threaten combo too.
But how much interaction would you have to make this attack? Like, Dispersal, double, Get Lost? Does it have to be that? What if the only interaction is these two spells? Would you still stand by the attack type thing?
Yeah, I think 2 is reasonable.
Okay.
You know, because I think that taking 4 off of these FOMOs, there's just some fish to block later. It's fine. Now you're in a reasonably even racing scenario. I think it's definitely fine.
Okay.
I like the pressure.
So there was Burst Lightning on the Screaming Nemesis, and then it went upstairs. So an invisible emblem is here. You know, I feel like nobody's ever actually owned the emblem from Screaming Nemesis. I don't think I've ever actually seen a physical one.
It's actually not an emblem.
It's not a thing.
It's just hey, don't forget about this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Which is very, very strange.
Yes. Because you know what Magic players do from time to time? Forget about this.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
It actually has precedent, though. Sigma Lasher, I think, was the first card to ever have that ability.
Okay.
Same templating, where just the player can't gain life for the rest of the game. Okay. No emblem, so a little weird, but...
So we'll just remember it collectively.
Yep.
Because it comes into play, something like that, it will not be gaining any life for the rest of the turn. And hey, if that Burst Lightning was already going to go face, might as well aim it at the Nemesis. I like that. Now here is the lockdown. Not only getting 2 Fear of Missing Out, but getting 2 Roiling Dragonstorm. So if Harlan ever does want to deal with that lockdown, now Bailey will get some value coming back as well. So I wouldn't be too shocked if Harlan is like, yeah, I'll ignore that lockdown here, unless it would be to actually kill Bailey.
It is pretty fun in this format. how much interaction there is with lockdowning your own stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's just really a thing you wouldn't consider maybe, but it's very, very relevant.
Yes, definitely, especially if we're going to see some Orzhov Pixie decks.
Yep.
I mean, Orzhov Pixie utilizes lockdown almost like a Yorion ETB would. You know, like with that ability where you can play it, exile your own stuff, then bounce it to get some value. It has a Yorion-esque feel to it. Plus, it can just be a lockdown to deal with your opponent's stuff. Absolutely love that deck. So great against Izzet. And it's just a really, really cool deck. There's the Ghost Vacuum from Harlan to have some interaction for the combo.
Yes, like I was saying, you know, these Bailey's attacks so far, pushing the race into their favor. You know, we see 12 life, about to be 8. And now we see a big dumb dragon. You know, and we've seen this a lot from the Omni deck where post-board, forget the combo. I'm just going to beat you down with some pretty good mythic rares.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to see if we were going to get super frisky and bounce that lockdown. That'd be a little dangerous, I must say. But hey, I'd be here for it. Instead, bounce the creatures. Now all of a sudden Bailey's on the aggressive. And you know what? We haven't seen it all. The combo. Anywhere to be found. And Bailey's still looking like he's going to get it done.
This is where a Meringue River Regent just looks so good in this deck. You know,
it's such a phenomenal card.
You know, Coil and Catch, the instant speed Sift, would be close to playable in the deck without the Dragon half. But the Dragon half both facilitating the combo as well as just being like just a fine card to cast. You know, a 6/7 is quite large. You know, if you're behind, it can turn a board. If you're ahead, like in the game like this in the post-board games, the creatures, you push you some damage. Just great stuff.
It's hard to find a spot where this card is bad. The thing is, it's not amazing up against Izzet Prowess just in general. Like 4-mana spell can get Spell Pierce pretty easily, and when you're playing it to bounce something, everything's so cheap from Prowess that it ends up being just okay. But it's still facilitating, you know, discarding the Omniscience, so it can't be that bad, you know?
Harlan going for the Hail Mary here of flip over the Quarry land in the attack step, trying to hit maybe a get lost, something like that.
Yep.
And he looks to stay alive is actually not stay alive, right? Because there's no life gain.
Isn't it just your opponent can't gain life? Or is it just no getting life?
I'm sorry, I had it backwards, right?
Okay.
My bad. Usually Helix is playing the defensive deck, so
yes.
And it's weird because we've flipped here where Harlan is playing defense.
Yes.
Which is odd, but what this Omni deck's capable of.
Absolutely. Yeah, we haven't really seen Lightning Helix and Screaming Nemesis together too often. The Boros Mice Shell for a little bit, you know, had that combination, but yeah, slightly odd there for sure. Here's Fear of Missing Out. Discard a land. See what we can find. Feels like desperation, and it indeed was. Game number 2 going to Bailey, and so far, no Omnisciences came into play.
Yeah, the primary combo plan is obviously quite good against Harlan, but this sort of sideboard pseudo control plan is not bad either. You know, I mean, it does put a lot of weight on Beza, which we saw turn 4 of that game absolutely completely turn the game around, but it's very effective. You know, the Dragon and the Overlord, plenty of threats, and can kind of make the cards like Magebane Lizard and Ghost Vacuum just look silly.
Yeah. No, 100%. Any changes you make when it comes to play draw here, Jim, or still just kind of business as usual?
I think it's less about play draw and more just about the feel of what each player wants to do for Game 3. You know, where you know we just saw Bailey win an extremely combat-oriented creature game.
Sure.
Does that make Harlan bring in a few more kill spells and shave down on the lizards? And then does that make Bailey want to maybe look more combo for Game 3? You know, so it's a real song and dance. I absolutely adore transformational sideboards in Magic. You know, because it really becomes a sort of game of chess where it's like, all right, well, you're thinking this. I felt like you really like this and you're going to stay that way, so I'm going to do this in Game 3. And there's just a bunch of play back and forth.
I love it, too. I especially love it in closed deckless tournaments. Totally get... We need open deckless tournaments. Makes a lot of sense. When we have coverage, it is an unfair advantage to show off people's decks. And you shouldn't be disadvantaged because you're a name in the community, you have a cool deck, so we show it on the broadcast kind of thing. But transformational sideboards, when it's closed deck list, you can really get people pretty good, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it. My first Pro Tour, there was a Heartbeat of Spring combo deck in Standard.
Yeah. And
I lost to player's actually banned now, I think. But and he completely had a 15-card creature sideboard.
Yeah.
Just boarded all creatures, boarded out the entire combo, and this is my first Pro Tour. Game 2, I was stunned.
Yeah.
It was just like, creature on 2, creature on 3, creature on 4, GT. And I was just like, but you comboed me in game 1.
You comboed me.
That's not fair.
It was like a classic welcome to the Pro Tour, kid, huh?
Yep.
So, well, we are sideboarding here. Let's put up our sponsor slide and give a shout out here. Of course, big shout out to Dragon Shills and Beckett for sponsoring Live Paper Magic. Absolutely love what they are doing. Dragon Shills has been an industry leader in the sleeve game forever. You know, absolutely forever. And Beckett, if you got any really nice cards, you want them graded. They're also at most of these events. I've went to Beckett and I've talked to them. You know, you can do some cool stuff in person as well if you're going to be at any of these SCG events. Get your stuff graded. I believe they take it back, you know, to their area, grade it, and then they mail it to you. They don't do any grading on site or anything, but yeah, you can really get some cool stuff going on with Beckett. So thanks to our sponsors. We appreciate you.
That'd be kind of cool if it was on site.
Yes.
Take the card, look at it. I'd give it a 6.
Yeah. Just one guy's like, yeah, you know what? I'll judge this right now.
6.3.
Yeah, apparently they do it at the Magic Cons, you know, where they just have a grading team there.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess they, maybe one day they'll bring the full force here. I'll have to check that out when I'm at this next Magic Con here in Vegas. That's some cool stuff. So thanks to our sponsors as we get underway here. Got a Surveil land into Harlan. Being able to play Invasion of Gobakon. One thing I'd love about Invasion against this Omniscient deck, if you see an Omniscience, you can take it, and they are not ever casting that. I'll tell you that.
All right, look, it's not non-zero.
Okay.
Just because it costs 12 mana doesn't mean they can't cast it at some point.
Hey, that's true. That's true. Yeah, no cheating it into play, though, when it's removed with Invasion of Gobakon. So what are you taking here, Jim?
So let's see, we got a hand of Get Lost, see an Overlord, stock up Abuelos and 3 lands. Obviously without Omniscience, or even really a discard outlet. The Abuelos not very exciting. Honestly, the Overlords look kind of appealing, but stock up too. Stock up's the card. This hand looks kind of weak, you know, so stock up's the kind of card that would fix it. There is some fear that the Overlord is just really, really good.
Yeah.
You know, but we see Harlan valuing, we can't see the cards in Harlan's hand. Harlan can.
Yeah.
So Harlan clearly has a creature worth protecting or an enchant worth protecting.
Makes sense. So Get Lost is the pick. That's got to lead me to believe that Harlan has a plan to, let's say, play a fear, or not a fear missing out, a Screaming Nemesis and attack this invasion. Even better. Even better. Be able to discard some cards, draw 2. Let's see if Bailey found the interaction. If not, a flipped invasion is big game.
Yeah, pretty cool. So this makes the creatures grow every turn. And the battle can be sacrificed, or the enchantment now, I suppose, to give your team hexproof, indestructible. So nice way to kind of defend. And then the growth is important too, where like now this one creature is a threat. If Bailey tries to kill it, or if as far as dispersal it can be fizzled.
Yeah.
And then every turn it gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, really, really big game here. And let's see what we have. So we did draw a dispersal, or it's just time to stock it up. Now, we should have 5 cards in hand, so it's not going to be the case like, oh, if you find Omniscience, sometimes that's nice. When you go up to 8 cards, just discard it to clean up. That's not going to be the case as we have 5 cards there. And now Harlan's going to have one more turn to kind of just get as aggressive and as proactive as he possibly can and maybe make it so Bailey is a little too far behind.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the cards Harlan discarded.
Yeah.
Left in a lot of the burn spells. You kind of just have to.
Yeah.
You know, the way Harlan's deck is constructed, you just can't cut that many cards. And these are at least cards that give you reach, you know, where they're discarded here, they're not a main part of the plan. But if Harlan gets into a spot where, you know, Bailey falls down to 2 or 3 life, but can't quite kill him, and then facing down a combo, that can end that game 1 turn sooner, which is not great, but still reasonably important.
What are you talking about? They both destroyed temporary lockdown brought back from Umbuelo's Awakening.
We have seen that happen a surprising amount of times.
Yes, yeah. AK1.
Yeah. If I had a nickel, I'd only have 1, but
hey, that's all right.
Still kind of weird.
If I had a nickel, I'd have 1 nickel. See what Harlan's follow-up is here. Oh, we got a fear of missing out. Discard a land. Instant and land, so a couple types away from Delirium.
So now the issue here for Harlan's deck is not great at getting Delirium. It's mostly creatures and instants. There are a few enchantments, a few planeswalkers. The Gobakon itself is actually a battle, so that would count. And that can be sacrificed at any point. So you could see like a surprise Delirium.
Sure.
Sacrifice in the battle, but Delirium is not super easy to achieve with Harlan's deck.
Yeah, it really isn't. Playing a fear of missing out next turn, discarding fear of missing out. That's spicy. Get you right to Delirium, but that is a lot of things you have to do here. And just a land and pass to Harlan. Big turn of this game. I see a River Regent from Bailey, so that's maybe the plan is hope Harlan doesn't do anything too busted and then just sift and hope to win the game next turn. That doesn't feel great, though.
Yeah, that's the scary part of his deck where, like, you've been saying a lot about the idea of being in check.
Yes.
When the Omni's in the graveyard, it completely changes how your opponent has to play. It is not there yet, but it looks like a coil and catch. So it could be, it's Schrodinger's omniscience, if you will. So it might be there, it might not be there, and Harlan has to prepare for that because this looks very much like a draw 3 discard 1.
Yeah, and even if it's not there, half the time you're like, okay, if I don't find the combo and I find a lockdown, I can clear away your battlefield. That's not the case with what Harlan has set up. Harlan has a strong 3-drop that with this attack, it getting pumped next turn, and if all Bailey had was just lockdown, that's probably not enough. Bailey would either need to combo off, which is kind of the best plan. The best way to survive, kill your opponent, believe it or not. Or second best, lockdown and a dispersal, something like that to be able to clean up all the permanents.
It's also a bit of a wrench in the plan here, too, that, like, Harlan has these random burn spells in his deck.
Yeah.
So you can't be quite sure about the math. It's not a clean clock where you might be 2 or 3 life lower than you think you are.
Yeah.
Thus shaving a turn off your plan of setting up to go off.
Absolutely. Bailey just said, I'll take it. I'll take all this damage. No big deal. And a post-combat fear of missing out. That would lead me to believe that we're not going to get Delirium right now.
It's Planeswalker.
Okay. So the battle could give Delirium, right? But the fact that, we still want this for the counters, and if there is any kind of direct cards that are being targeted for Harlan, there was Omniscience. So Omniscience is in the yard. Counters go up. And now let's see if Bailey has it, or if Harlan could do anything about it. I'm not seeing a lot of ways that Harlan could interact in general.
We're going to see that usual one-turn or one-step window where Omni comes into play as a 1/1. When that first spell is cast, do you have a Destroy Evil? Do you have a burn spell? Some way to kill it. And there's the Abuelos.
Okay, here it is. Is this game just over in favor of Bailey?
Ooh.
Abner.
So that is the way to play around it by your first spell being a second Omniscience.
Yep.
So now if you kill it, you still want to play. That being said, if the cards that are available to Bailey are Omniscience and Beza, you might not have the critical mass of card draw you needed to fully go off here.
Yep, absolutely. Still get the fish, even though you have 2 creatures. And now you got to think this might be completely slipped out of hand. We see an Overlord. I see 2 more River Regents in hand, as well as that Dispersal plus a land. I think Bailey's got this one.
That's a lot of card draw, yeah.
That is a lot of card draw.
And the problem is that even if it's not, we just see a fizzle here, which puts 2 dragons into play.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Good luck, Harlan.
Yeah, put 2 dragons into play, bounce Harlan's whole board, have a Beza, have some fish.
Yep.
Looks like Bailey's not even going for that. I believe we did see the Founding the Third Path just drawn, so that's available. Why not? Here's 10 more power.
Yeah, some decks are able to overcome, Overlord and friends. Harlan's deck is not really built like that.
No, not really. Harlan was 1 turn away from beating the matchup that, well, he definitely did not want to play against. It makes sense.